Check, check, check. Check, check. Check, check. Check, check. Check, check. All right, ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me out there? All right, ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me out there? Okay, I think we're good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are here in front of the last 150 laps of the less 140 laps of the Daytona 500. Man, what a delay. All right, so here we go. We'll check club soda. Okay, so we are watching the last stage of the Daytona 500. And whoever you are, whoever sees this, it has taken me since stage 1 and 2 and this morning to get all this hooked up. Because I've done a live stream before through YouTube, but now I'm trying to do it through OBS with the green screen. And man, anyway, I think we got it set up. So this is my little FlexiSign program over here. And anyway, welcome. I think we just saw, if you've been watching the Daytona 500, you have seen Justin Allgaier through a late block and wreck the field. That was the big one. So in the spirit of explaining NASCAR terms and definitions, the big one is when there's a wreck and it takes out a big hunk of the field, and that's what happened. And now we got a rookie up front, Corey Heim, 3 Toyotas, and Riley Herbst is up front. So Hamlin's making it back to the front. He's one of the ones that got took out of the race. So if you're out there and you got a NASCAR question, let me know. And as always, this live stream is brought to you by the Left Hand Bag. We encourage non-dominant limb use. So it teaches you how to be left-handed. You can change your life if you experience the joys of non-dominant limb use. Basically, ladies and gentlemen, if you were to switch your mouse to the left side and use it for an hour, you might experience a whole different mental thing. So if you had something hard to do and you were dreading it and you wanted to make it a little bit easier, you could switch, you had some computer work to do, you could switch your mouse to the left side. And as you did that, you would take up extra brain space, because instead of moving the mouse with your right hand, now you're moving it with your left hand. And for real, like if you have that monkey mind going on, you would shut off the monkey mind possibly, because you're using your left hand. Normally right-handed people are using this side of their brain. Left-handed people use this side of their brain. But say you go to do your work and decide to switch your mouse to the left side, then whenever you're doing your work, you would actually have to, because all the data of moving the mouse is in this side of the brain. But if you're using your left side of the brain, or your left hand, the data would have to go from this side of the brain to this side of the brain out to here, because the data to move the mouse is over here. So what you want to do is, do it for an hour every day, or however much you can, afford to do without getting behind, and see what happens. Anyway, that is the left hand bag. I also have a left-handed dog leash. Does the same thing. So we are $53 to go, 3 Toyotas, 3 wide. There's going to be another wreck for sure. Man, I got to tell you, I did not realize how much resources it takes of the laptop to push all this stuff, right? I'm streaming from not streaming from, using my cell phone for my internet connection, and I'm monitoring the live stream on the cell phone. I got a second monitor going. I've got Sirius XM streaming in my ear, and I'm watching Fox on the screen. So, the Fox on the screen doesn't have, it's not pulling any resources, but man, my laptop's hot. Anyway, we're going to ask Gemini a couple questions while we got you here live. Hey, Gemini, can you hear me? Check, check, check. Gemini, can you tell me the difference in ratings of NASCAR races that are on antenna versus what's on a paywall, like a Fox Sports 1 or Amazon Prime? Can you compare the last couple of years and give me a percentage? Just give me some numbers that stick out as to the advantage or the bump a race gets whenever it's on the antenna versus a paywall. And make your answer as simple as possible, please. They're interviewing Justin Allgaier right now on Sirius XM. You got a question, let me know in the comments. So Allgaier, he fessed up to it that he made a late block. It's his fault. He's a great jobber, man. He's been running an Xfinity series for a long time, and he got in the Daytona 500 last year on speed, and he got in on speed again this year. It's a beautiful day in Central Florida, by the way. Windows are open, sun shiny, airing out the place. I love it. I think Corey Haim, the number 67, has an awesome looking car. That day glow yellow and black is amazing. All right, so the beauty of a NASCAR race being on antenna, Gemini says it makes it go up 50 to 100%. We did some of this yesterday during the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race. And last year during there was the first time it was on Amazon, and there's a lot of paywalls, and a lot of people complained, and they estimated there was about a 15% decrease in viewership because of that. However, the Xfinity series, which is now the O'Reilly series, went up in viewership a lot because the whole year everything was on the same channel, it was on antenna. So obviously they got some new people watching. And matter of fact, yesterday I was at the hospital, and the ARCA race was on in the waiting room. The ARCA race was on in the waiting room because of Cletus. Excuse me. Sorry, I know you can probably hear that. Riley Herbst is up front in a Toyota. Seabell, Bubba Wallace. If you're new to NASCAR, ladies and gentlemen, the 67, the 23, and the 35 are all on the same team. They're part of 2311. And Tyler Reddick is the fourth car on that team. He's down in 15th. Oh, excuse me. Whew. So if you're out there and you got a question, let me know. And you can probably see my green screen floating around back there. It took me forever to get all this synced up. And see, I still have the fuzz on the left and the right side of the green screen. I don't know exactly how to fix that. I've tried to adjust it, but there's so many adjustments. It's like, when you adjust one thing, it totally messes up the other thing. So anyway, did anybody see the Cletus race or see him spin out in the first couple laps of the truck race? It was cool he made it, and I think that NASCAR needs Cletus more than Cletus needs NASCAR. But I think we all agree maybe that floating to the back for the first half of the race might have been the thing to do. However, in his post-race interview, somebody asked him that question, and he did mention that he qualified 12th, and why would he go to the back? Oh yeah, brother. So it's so interesting that these three cars are just hanging in the front and nobody's really moving on the last stage. And then earlier in the race, it looked like Connor Zilic, he kind of caused that one wreck. It wasn't a terrible wreck, but it looked like when he was going around the corner, he got loose and kind of went up into Allgaier. And Allgaier was up front for a while, and he's an O'Reilly driver, a full-time O'Reilly driver. He's been a driver. He won the championship last year in O'Reilly, matter of fact. And if you are new to NASCAR, ladies and gentlemen, Denny Hamlin always has a shot. I don't know if you've been watching a while, but he is a darn good restrictor plate racer. And there's a good chance he'll make it to the front if he doesn't get wrecked out. And right here is where Cletus wrecked out for the truck race. They say coming out of 4, the car unloads a little bit. So instead of being real grippy, it it gets kind of light, and if you're not expecting it or used to it, it's easy for you to spin out. And that's what happened to Cletus. Old Cleater. See, you guys are seeing Allgaier on TV now. They had him on Sirius XM a few minutes ago. I got that going in my ear. So it's kind of interesting. I don't know if you've ever not been able to see a race whenever say it's on a paywall and you don't have like Fox Sports 1, or like the other night they moved it to Fox Sports 2 and we couldn't see what was going on. But anyway, sometimes you can find it somewhere on YouTube in Spanish or something like that, and then you could line up the audio from either Sirius XM or whoever in your market has it on the radio, and you can line it up. And the guys on the radio paint a different picture than the guys on TV do, because the guys on TV can lean on what's on the screen, but the guys on the radio know you don't have the screen, so they're a little more vivid and colorful with what they're explaining. It's really kind of cool. Oh wow, look at that. Look at that. That is so interesting. I'm in my work shirt, ladies and gentlemen. Long day. All good though, right? It's interesting though that they're all staying in the same exact spot. They're not moving too much. And in case you're new to NASCAR, ladies and gentlemen, this is a super speedway race like Talladega. In Talladega, the track is about the same length, but it's wider, so there's more room. Like they can go 4 wide on Talladega. And the other unique thing about Talladega is the finish line's a little further down the track. So in Daytona, it kind of seems like it's in the center, but at Talladega they have to go past the center and then make another left turn. So sometimes that causes troubles on the last lap. The other unique thing about Daytona is that normally the car on the outside, say if there's two cars going around the track, it's rare that the car on the outside can get a super good advantage and make it around the other car. Not all the time, but it's just unique at Daytona because they can all, the track is so wide, it's not a tight radius. So it's almost like, the inside of the track is still faster, but the outside of the track, you got to go further, right? But it doesn't really affect them that much at Daytona and Talladega. Excuse me. And the newest track that has been deemed a super speedway and is using restrictor plates is Atlanta. And Atlanta used to be like a normal mile and a half where they did not have restrictor plates or tapered spacers. I'll explain that in a minute. But I guess just the way they configured it, now they can't, the engines can't, they can't have the engines at full power on Daytona, Talladega, and Atlanta because they would get, in excess of 200 miles an hour, and that, which is fine. They can race that fast because they do at Michigan and all that stuff. But I guess there's more of a chance that they'll get airborne at Daytona. And these new cars, it's I guess the fifth season of the new car. These cars on the Sunday series have a flat bottom versus, an open bottom. So if these cars get in the air, it acts like a wing and they'll fly. It's interesting. Maybe this is a strategy of the Toyotas in the front. They're just not going to let anybody by. But they can't do that forever because what could happen is they could start pushing. And they keep running that Arby's meat in 3-box. That is crazy. Mozzarella sticks, French fries, some sort of apple thing, and a big old roast beef sandwich. Wow. If you're watching the race, a lot of times, they run a lot of commercials, but they still do the side by side. And if you've got SiriusXM, they do a good call. And it's usually, it seems like it's usually a little bit behind the live broadcast. And the way you sync it up, like say you were watching, say it was behind a paywall and you didn't have that particular service, you found it like in Spanish on YouTube or something, you would wait until a caution, and whenever they restart, like if you could just hold it, pause it, you could pause the audio on SiriusXM, or you could pause the video on YouTube and wait until whichever one's ahead, you pause that one, and then wait, like when you hear them say green flag, you pause it in your ear, and then whenever they say green flag on the video, you unpause it in your ear and it's lined up. Okay, so now they're broke up. So now there's two Fords trying to make their way through the middle. Another Ford on the outside. Oh no, there's Chevy on the outside. Anybody knows how to clean this up? The fuzz we got going here in the with the green screen? I would love to know. Maybe it's because the light is a little different. I don't know. Ooh, and Ryan Preece in fourth. Remember, he won the Bud Shootout. Well, not the Bud Shootout. Whatever the shootout was. He was delayed, I guess, about 9 days ago. They ran it in the middle of the week. That's a great race, too. And now they're coming up on the lappers. This is a good time to explain the lucky dog. The lucky dog is often, when you're watching a race, it's often, there's always a race going on in the back. So if something happens and there's a wreck and you got to stay in the pits while the field goes around you and you lose a lap, the guys in the back are always racing for the lucky dog. Like they're always racing to be the first, being first with the cameras and the guys are usually talking about. But the lucky dog is goes to the first car one lap down. So say there's 5 or 6 cars that were in a wreck or they are slow or whatever. Well, the whole time those guys in the back are trying to be the first car one lap down because whenever the caution comes out, that car that is the lucky dog, the first car that's one lap down, gets to go around the field and get their lap back. It's just a beautiful way. So a lot of drivers have won a race by getting enough lucky dogs because it's almost impossible for if you lose your lap to go around the field on speed. You can't do that in most cases. And then another unique rule about the lucky dog is if you're if there's a caution and you're the lucky dog, you get your lap back. But if you cause the caution, you do not get the lucky dog. The second car, the next car behind you that was a lap down, gets it. And isn't it hard to believe, ladies and gentlemen, that Bart Simpson has not aged a bit in all these years? I mean, he's been around since the 90s. I bet you Ryan Preece is going to win it. He's hungry. He's got a lot of confidence. Brad Keselowski, he's running the race fresh off a broken femur. So if you got a question out there, let me know. And I wonder if they still got a fuel. They probably still have a fuel stop. All of them do. Unless there's another wreck. And Shane Van Gisbergen, Southpaw Speed himself, was leading for quite a few laps, but he got caught up in the big one. And the big one's when, there's an accident and it takes out part of the field. There's always a big one in these super speedway races. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, next week is Atlanta, and that is an amazing race because they are running restrictor plates or tapered spacers on the engines because they don't want them going at max speed. And it takes, when they basically put a plate or a block on top of the intake manifold where the air goes in the engine, and it's like a thick block, and there's like these cone shaped holes. There's 4 holes, and they're all the same. They go on all the cars. So whenever they, floor the, put the pedal to the metal, it takes the car longer to get up to speed, or the engine to get up to speed. So those guys are using their left foot and their right foot on the pedals. In other words, their right foot is on the gas pedal and their left foot is on the brake. And if they need to slow down, they'll do what's called dragging the brake. So they'll hold the gas pedal to the floor, and then they'll apply a little bit of brake to slow the car down. That way the engine stays wound up. Like, they keep them wound up as much as possible. Yeah, so they do have to take another fuel stop. And some of them probably won't even take tires. Man, they did call the weather right because it is getting cloudy. Check out this stat about antenna races, ladies and gentlemen. Back in 2024, the Bristol Spring Race was on antenna. And it went down from 3.8 million to 2 million. 46% decrease. Wow. So it went down in 2025. It says most cable streaming races generally draw between 1.5 and 2.5 million viewers. The Las Vegas Spring Race moved from Fox to FS1. Viewership dropped from 4.36 million down to 3 million. Wow. Charlotte Roval, which is an awesome race, by the way. And we don't get it this year, but it's all good. Moved from NBC to USA Network. It fell from 2.4 million to 1.54 million. They say last year the Xfinity Series, which is now the O'Reilly Series, moved or went from had an 11% increase. The IndyCar Series, which it's kind of apples and oranges, but they increased by 27% by going to the antenna. Okay, Gemini, can you give me the statistics for the differences in the 2025 season on the antenna versus the paywall just in 2025? Like the effects of the races. Say if a race went from on the super speedway races, Talladega and Daytona and all that stuff. Like, I know those are heavy hitters, but what is the highest ratings any of the super speedway races have ever gotten? This is Google Gemini, by the way. Bubba Wallace hanging on to the front in the Toyota. 4 Toyotas on the inside. Still Riley Herbst hanging tough up front. Ryan Preece still up front. See, it's starting to get choppy out there. There's going to be another wreck. Hopefully, Keselowski's femur is all healed up. And as they're out there racing, what's really happening is there's like a imaginary beach ball between them, and the closer we can get up behind the cars in front of them, it pushes the cars forward. And I love how this new car, how the fire comes out of the pipes. The fire came out of the pipes on the other cars too, but those pipes they blended into one pipe and it came out of the back of the car in front of the rear tire. So the length was longer, but now there's a pipe coming out of each side, which is behind the front tires. So the distance is shorter. So it's easier to see the fire coming out of the pipes. And the reason that happens is whenever they let off the throttle, there's still unburnt fuel and it goes through the hot exhaust pipes and it catches on fire. It looks badass. So this is going to be interesting. They're all single file. It's going to be interesting to see if they all peel off the track at the same time to get gas. So the 2025 Daytona 500 last year, this race we're watching right now, got 6.76 million viewers. The highest rated NASCAR super speedway race in TV history is the 2006 Daytona 500, which had 19.4 million viewers. The 02 Daytona 500 had 18 million viewers. Isn't that interesting? Interesting. They're saying that some drivers got 4 seconds of fuel and some drivers got 6. Nobody's changing tires. But ironically, last night when Austin Hill won the race, he took tires, and most of the guys weren't taking 4 tires, but he took 4 and it helped him. A lot of times they don't have to take tires at super speedway races because the cars aren't like on the edge of spinning out because the track's so big, the radius isn't super arced, and they don't wear their tires out as fast. And plus, on this next gen car, the tire is way bigger and wider. Here we go, next round of pit stops. 15 to go. There's going to be a wreck. Savard's in the front, but I don't think he's taking fuel yet. And Hocevar, he ran all 3 races this weekend. He ran the trucks. He ran last night in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and he's running right now. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, this live stream brought to you by the Left Hand Bag, encouraging non-dominant limb use. What that means is, if you act like a left-hander for a little while, you might become more creative, or if you got something on your mind and you got a project to do at work, and maybe you're having a creative block. If you change your mouse to the left side, there's a high likelihood that it'll shake something loose in there, and you will experience the joys of being left-handed. Because there's I don't know if you know this or not, but most left-handers there's about 12% of the population is left-handed, and the rest of the people are right-handed. But on the spectrum of autism and ADHD and all that stuff, those people that have been diagnosed, so to speak, there's a higher frequency of left-handers in that field, meaning I think it's about 30% of the people who've been diagnosed are left-handed. So it's interesting that, now there's a lot of data in that more left-handed people are on the spectrum than aren't, of the people that have been diagnosed, but that's still more right-handed people are on the spectrum than left-handers overall. But it's interesting. And I also believe there's other things lined up with left-handers that are more frequent, that are statistically, and the general rule is left-handers are more creative and all this other stuff. But the reason I got on this left-handed kick is I'm left-handed, but when Shane Van Gisbergen came to the States and started winning, you'll notice that he uses, whenever he wins, like he won 5 times last year, he kicks the rugby ball, he signs it with his left hand, and then he kicks it with his right leg. So he's left hand dominant and right leg dominant. And I believe that gives him an advantage over the other mechanical things that he's doing, besides just, his unique abilities. He's a heel toe driver, so he's essentially got 3 feet. But whenever he's in the car, he's steering with his dominant left hand, and he's braking the car with his dominant right leg, which means he's completely opposite of our drivers, because when I say our drivers, I mean the regular NASCAR drivers that came up in the States and aren't right foot breakers, because in NASCAR, most drivers are left foot breakers. Like I explained earlier, they keep the throttle to the floor, and then they use their left foot to work the brake while the throttle's to the floor. But Shane Van Gisbergen, he uses his right foot for the brake and the gas. So whenever he's pushing on the brake with the ball of his right foot, and he needs to hit the gas, because you got to rev the engine up to downshift, he hits it with his heel. And then he's got his left foot left to use the clutch. So he's got that advantage. And the reason he's using the clutch is because he can reduce the engine braking with his left foot. Wow. Getting exciting now. We're down to 10 laps to go. This is the best part of the race, ladies and gentlemen. Here comes Bubba. He had a taste of being up front, and he's fast. In the 24, he's in 3rd place right now. William Byron, he won last year, and he won the year before. I wonder why they're waiting so late to take fuel. Oh, here we go. Ah, There goes Hamlin's chance. Minor wreck. There's not enough cars to have a big one. Michael McDowell is in the lead at the caution, which means he might win the damn race because he's won on that Daytona before. And Hocevar is his teammate. So if they've already got fuel and they restack them, there's a good chance they'll stay in the front. And Byron's fourth. He's won twice. Hocevar's hungry. Got a question? Ask me in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer it. Oh, it looks like Corey Haim pushed Denny Hamlin too much. Hit the wall, towed the front tire out. That's cool how AJ Allmendinger, the 16's running Biffle's old font. I don't know if any of y'all have looked into the Biffle plane crash, and there's a bunch of information out there. There's all the surface stuff, but I looked into it a lot, and I used good old Gemini to try and figure some things out. But it sounds like the ultimate thing that happened was, to me anyway, that they were having electrical trouble, and the electrical trouble started because of trying to start the plane on the ground, because those airplanes have one big giant battery that has to start two turbine engines, and a lot of times they use a cart. They use the power off the cart so it doesn't kill the battery on the plane. And it's acceptable to start the plane without the cart, but there's a procedure to do it, I guess. Anyway, they tried to start the first engine on the left side, and it didn't start. Then they started the right engine successfully. And then, in order not to completely kill the battery, they did a cross start where they used the generator on the engine that was running plus the battery to start the left engine. And when you do that, you have to switch a switch in the cockpit from generator to start, I think it is, because like in a Prius, the motor generators, sometimes they're starters, sometimes they generate power, and sometimes they produce power. And that's how it is on those turbine engines on that kind of plane. So the motor that starts the turbine, it's got to run for a long time, get it up to speed, and then they, I guess, inject fuel. And then once the turbine's got enough power, then the starter disengages. So it's a lot longer procedure to run the starter, and you can only do it 2 times per engine. And if the engine doesn't start, you got to wait 30 minutes so everything cools down. Well, anyway, the first one, they had a hard start, so that dumped the battery a lot. And then they used the battery in the right engine to start the left engine. But whenever they do that, the right engine is only given about 30% of the power to start the left engine. So the second start of the engine killed the battery more. And it looks like when they got in the air, they only had power. There's 2 electrical systems in the airplane, a left side electrical and a right side electrical, so it's redundant. So if one of the after the jet engines start running, you flip switches to go from start to generator. So both of the engines have generators on them, and both are creating power. So if one of the generators fails, you still have one generator, and it can power both sides of the plane. And in the cockpit, all the controls are powered by the left side on the left side and on the right side on the right side. Anyway, when they got in the air, the left seat pilot was having trouble with his instrumentation because the left side generator, what it sounds like, the switch didn't get flipped back on to generate power. And the theory is that since the generator on the right, since they used the engine on the right to power the left engine to start it, It's possible it blew a fuse because the left engine, anyway, there's a possibility that it blew a fuse. So then when the fuse blew, that isolated that engine from charging the battery, to protect itself so it doesn't blow the battery or anything like that. Well, anyway, when they got in the air, they realized the left bus wasn't charging. So the pilot on the left didn't have power. So by the time they got in the air, the generator switch was off on the left side, so it wasn't charging the battery. And if they blew that fuse on the right engine to charge the battery, the right engine wasn't charging the battery. So the whole time they're in the air, the battery was not being charged. And the reason the right side pilot had instrumentation is because the generator was working on the right engine and powering that right side. And then whenever they realized the switch on the generator wasn't on in the air right before they landed, they turned it back on, and he got some power on the left side. But since the battery was so dead, all that power went, most of the power, because the electricity goes where to the easiest, the easiest path. So the battery was sucking the power. And then when they were on final, the NTSB report showed that the flaps, the jack screw on the flaps was not, in other words, the flaps weren't out. And then since the left side of the airplane's electrical system was compromised, it was, didn't have full power enough to charge everything. So the stall horn, or the computer that detects stall, and the stick shaker, all that's powered on the left side. And it either works or it doesn't. So it's kind of like a computer, it has to have power. It doesn't either kind of work or kind of not work. Like a light bulb will be dim if there's not enough power. So it's either on or it's off. So they didn't have the stick shaker, they didn't have the stall warning. And from what I read, the jack screw motor, or whatever the thing that initiates the jack screw to make the flaps go up and down, is powered by the left side bus, which wasn't getting power. So it's possible that they didn't know the flaps weren't deployed, because they also didn't have landing gear lights, even though the gear was spotted as down. So the theory is that they probably thought the flaps were deployed. So their airspeed, since they were full of fuel, fully loaded, their airspeed was too low, and they possibly just stalled before they got to where they needed to get, because in their mind, they probably thought they had the flaps deployed. And that's kind of probably what ultimately caused them to crash. Just a theory. So 5 to go, the Daytona 500. Michael McDowell's in the lead. That's dangerous. Hocevar hasn't won. Reddick has won. Byron's won 2. Kozlowski's won before. Buscher's won before. Wallace has won before. Gregson has not won. So if anybody causes the next wreck, it's probably going to be the 77 Hocevar. Ladies and gentlemen, these club sodas are fizzy, and I love me a Coke, a Publix brand Coke. And in order to sort of not drink a Coke, if you drink one of these, it almost gives you the same thing, because it's fizzy and it's tasty. So here we go, 5 to go. In the product description, I mean in my YouTube, the links in the YouTube channel name thing. So here we go, best part of the race. Ooh, they're bumping already. Here comes Bubba. Okay, so those two in the lead right now, they are on the same team. McDowell's already won a super speedway race. Hocevar has not. Now see, they're getting too far out front, and if they do that, they don't have any air behind them pushing them. And Logano always wins on super speedways. He always comes from the rear. Woo! Look at that hard hit. Man, one lap around Daytona is a long way. Eric Jones has won at Daytona before. He's the one pushing 77 Hocevar. See how far McDowell's out, man? That is dangerous. Ooh, we're going to wreck. Hocevar's in the front. One lap to go. Whoa, there he goes. Wrecked. They're going to let him go around. Chase Elliott again. Oh my God. Come on, Reddick. Oh. Oh man. That was not good. Mm.